entity known as Nigeria was created in 1914 by the colonial masters when the northern and southern protectorates were merged by the first Governor General of the colony and Protectorate of Nigeria, Sir Frederick Lugard. This year marks 100 years of that amalgamation. How has the territory known as Nigeria fared over the last 100 years? My guest is a professor of political science and the executive director of the Ken Namani Center for Leadership and Development. Hello there, glad to have you join us on the program this week. I'm Gloria Omezuke. Now, how did a diverse people, language and culture become one nation? This is one question my guest will be addressing this week as we reflect on the amalgamation and leadership problems in the country. And don't forget, this issue has raised a lot of eyebrows, so we would examine that. But first, the Minister of Information, Mr. Labaran Mako, believes that the 1914 exercise that gave birth to the nation known as Nigeria has a divine purpose. Listen to him.
Some people continue to argue that the emergence of Nigeria is a matter of geographical expression, or Nigeria came to being by force of Britain. Now tell me, and I want to say it clearly, every other country came into being by force, either of one family conquering other families to establish its own civilization, or one clan conquering other clans to establish its own authority in a community or a kingdom, or one country conquering other countries to establish an empire. No nation came into being by lovemaking. Every nation came into being by force. So if Nigeria came into being because Britain conquered some of the territories and made them one country, that is how every country came in. These are matters beyond us. But the reality is that God has a hand in every drama. And nations emerge as a result of the drama of human activity.
I'm being joined on the program by the Executive Director of the Ken Namani Center for Leadership and Development, and we speak all about the Centenary celebration. Professor Ebere Omodewe, you're welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
Well, let's begin with Nigeria's 100 years of nationhood. Even though that is still under contention, what really is your own view of our journey so far?
Okay, well, I think there is need to acknowledge the fact that the North and the South were brought together at one point in our history, but not looked at. That's a historical fact. And that anything that lives on for 100 years is worth celebration of some sort. And to that extent, the country is justified to celebrate a century of being together. But amalgamation that took place was a fusion of administrations. And anybody can do that. It's not that big deal to bring two administrations together as such. But what is important in my view is the amalgamation of Nigerian peoples rather than administration, which is implied by the amalgamation of northern and southern administrations under Lugard. While that was, as I said, easy to make successful, it has not been so. That success cannot spill over to the amalgamation of Nigerian peoples to create a truly Nigerianized community.
Well, many people say that the legality of the amalgamation has expired. Is that true?
Well, I'm not a historian. I can't say if it is absolutely true or not. But what I do know is that the most important question is the amalgamation of the peoples. And in that we have had a total failure. We have had a very, very deep failure in creating the coming together of Nigerians from all parts of the amalgamated.
Even though we've spent 100 years, according to them now. Now, let me bring you to this comment made recently by the governor of Lagos State, Governor Fashola. He said, but as far as Centenary is concerned, Nigeria was born an independent sovereign country on October 1, 1960. And he said perhaps Nigeria was conceived in 1914. As we race towards this, it is important not to distort history. Is this a distortion?
Well, it's not a distortion because the two things did take place as historical realities. We did have our independence declaration, and as with respect to Fashola, the governor's statement, that is true, that's when Nigeria as an independent nation took place. But it was a process. It was a process that started with imperialism, and that imperialism translated into colonialism, and it was under that colonial situation that we got our independence. The amalgamation was not the same thing as the colonial period. And so our own founding fathers fought to become independent from colonialism. And I think that they failed us while battling over the issues of amalgamation that threw up colonialism, that produced the contestations by those founding fathers that didn't pay any particular attention in creating one people, in creating a nation. We don't have a Nigerian nation because a nation is a reference to a people. What we have is a country, is a territorial expression, and that territorial expression may be what is causing the confusion that is going on now.
Because it's important to understand where we are, find our bearing, as regards this celebration, the proposed celebration. Because we have another comment. Someone also said, if anything, only a day of sober reflection should be observed, with all Nigerians pondering their journey to where the nation is and what they should do to turn things around. And he said, no celebration, no public fanfare. That's a little extreme, but I'd like to really hear your comments, because he also says government officials at all levels with their heads in their hands, should spend even more time meditating on their failure, to the nation and seek restitution. Yes. How much of this do you believe?
Well, I believe there's been a great failure in the project Nigeria. And that failure has been the inability of our leaders since independence to actually work against what colonialism established. Look, if you look at the map of Nigeria, you immediately see the imbalance. There is this huge north that is sitting on the shoulders of a feeble southwest and southeast. It was looking like a suffocating picture. And this imbalance, which was imposed by the colonial powers, was the source of agitation. It was a source of discomfort that this country has had to bear all these years. And none of our leaders, whether it was Ahmadu Bello, Azikiwe, Awolowo, these great three who had their own merits, none of them did anything to correct that imbalance until the war happened. It was that war which forced the federal side to create states, 12 states, equally distributed between South and North, 6 each, and these 12 states were created to seek the minority support for the war against Biafra. And that situation is what started to correct this imbalance of the geography.
But did it eventually do that?
Pardon?
It did not succeed in any way, did it?
Well, yes, the map is still there, but the one central government is now not the same. We now have 36 states as opposed to 3 regions. And that had a way of removing that agitation some, even though some people still want some states. But that first picture that was imposed as a result of the amalgamation, because the maps were not done by Nigerians. The map of Nigeria was imposed by colonial power. That actually was a distortion that is now being reduced through the creation of states.
Now, it seems almost, hard to believe that the nation is still grappling with the concept, for want of a better word, of unity, because even as we celebrate 100 years, so to speak, that unity problem is still there. Is this a universal thing, or is it just about us?
Yeah, it is our failure that we have not been able to create a Nigerianization of this society. People here in this country are first members of their ethnic groups before they see themselves as Nigerians. That remains a big problem, and that big problem is still there. The expression of it, the clear expression of it, is that in 2014, after 100 years of existence in the amalgamation, we are going to have a national conference where this problem is going to be, which we are looking for solution for this problem. Since that time, since 100 years. So if you look at amalgamation on the basis of the Nigerians coming together as one, it was a total failure. But if you look at it as a fusion of administrations, of the Northern Protectorate and the Southern Protectorate, like I said, it's a piece of cake for any administrator to do when you compare it with the serious job of forming a nation out of a heterogeneous nationality as we have.
Because some people have gone to the extent of saying, and in fact an extreme of saying Nigeria is a mistake.
Well, what they give these, look, I think creating a big Nigeria is a very good thing, not only for Nigerians but for all black people. This is the biggest concentration of black people in the world, and if we can have a collective voice that is informed by oneness, by unity, then we are going to be in a very strong position to not only protect the interest of Nigerians, but also speak out whenever black people are abused anywhere in the world.
We'll come back to the issue you mentioned earlier on the national dialogue when we return from this break. Join us again.
Today we are not just celebrating a new year, but we are celebrating a special new year. A new year that modern Nigeria is 100 years. And we use this period to begin to think what will be Nigeria in the next 100 years. Not just to celebrate 100 years of the amalgamation of Northern Protectorate and Southern Protectorate to make the modern Nigeria, but what will be the future of our children, our grandchildren in the next 100 years.
Welcome back. We're still with the Professor of Political Science and a former consultant to the United Nations, Professor Ebere Omoduwe. Thank you for joining us once again.
Thank you very much.
But still on this issue of the Centenary celebration, you mentioned earlier about the national dialogue and all the problems that's associated with it. Now, what exactly is your perspective on this? Is this the right solution to the political crisis we're facing now?
Well, I think it's really brilliant to make the people talk if they have problems, if they have issues to be resolved, to bring them to the table and have them speak to those issues until they reach a solution.
But how much faith do you have in this proposed dialogue?
Well, I think it does have the support of the government, of our current government. And I think if it is structured in such a way that a lot of people are going to accept it, it should happen. It should be able to create or come up with solutions to some of our problems. Because you see, the biggest problem we have goes back to the point that we made before, and that is we have a problem. We have a nationality question, and this nationality question is that we now have a country in which there is basically very limited agreement on who is a Nigerian. In the sense, of course, we know who is a Nigerian by passport and so on, but on the Nigerianness in all of us. And if we can, for instance, take the issue of this indigeneity problem. Look, if we can amend, if they reach in a talk, go to the table and agree to amend the constitution, even if not writing a brand new one, so that everything that makes every person feel uncomfortable. Look, if I go to a state, how long does it take me to become a citizen of that state? And if I'm a Nigerian and I come to, if I come from Imo State, and I go to so Lagos State, and there in Lagos, I will never have a full right of a Lagosian for as long as I live. Why would I see myself as a Nigerian first? But if we can now go to our constitution and amend it, and every place we have indigene, we remove it and put resident. So that if I go to Lagos or you come to Imo State, and we have a rule, a constitutional provision that it takes you, once you stay 5 years or 4 years or 3 years in this state, then you have all the rights and privileges appertaining to anybody born in that place. If we don't have to use your parents, your grandparents being born in a place to make you a citizen there, then we are going to be resolving a lot of the problem that is creating wedges between